don't fall. That's when you know you're gonna go dry. And the rain don't fall. That's when you know you're gonna go dry. And it won't do no good to be crying out loud, babe, or cursing the sky.
Welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and I'm here tonight with Keith Kimball, who is a Green Party candidate for the Board of Education again this year. So welcome, Keith. This year, one of the themes of our city elections, and it's grown out a little bit of our having a Democratic primary this year, just a couple weeks ago, is that voters don't have to vote across a party line. When you're going to the polls, well, before you go to the polls, it's a good idea to find out as much as you can about everyone whose name is on the ballot, vote for the individuals you favor, not across the line, and not necessarily 7, just the ones you'd really like to see. So my little pitch for getting educated and also for voting strategically rather than voting easily, I guess. So welcome, Keith. Do you want to talk a little bit about your background? This isn't the first time you've been on the show or the first time you've run for the board, but maybe remind people of what your background is and why you're interested in this position.
Yeah, first of all, I've lived in New London more than half my life now, over 30 years, and my wife joined me from Miami, and she loves it here, and I love my community. We also have a daughter, a 12-year-old daughter. She goes to Benny Dover Junior High, and we very quickly decided that we wanted her to go to public school. I went to public school, and so did my wife, and we just believe very strongly that the public education option should be high enough in quality for anyone. It's a public option. It should do the job, and the only real way to stay on top of that is to actually be involved in it. So she went to Friendship School with Learn in Waterford, and that's really when I started getting involved with local schools. Both of my parents were professional teachers, and that also had a very large impact on my passion and interest for education in general. And so when the opportunity came up, I run in the past 2 elections for the Board of Education, and I think what really got me really interested in at least being influential, reaching out, making connections with city government and the district, and is just as soon as I started helping out at Friendship School, I was treasurer on their PTO. I saw how incredibly underfunded the schools in the area are, and New London is worse than most. Per capita, we get less per student than most areas, and unfortunately, we serve a large community of special needs kids. We have 2 other predominant languages besides English in New London. In our school district itself, Spanish is the most common language, not English. And so that costs more, and I started to see things falling between the cracks in our schools. We don't have translation services for families, right? That's aside from not being legal. It's a burden on families that the teachers and the administration need to communicate with them on, and the district does a really good job with budgeting with what they have, but they don't have enough. So I really wanted to get involved in that because I'm an accountant, retired accountant, but I do stay involved in nonprofit accounting. I worked for corporations in New London County for 25 years, so I have experience and skills in budgeting, in finance and financial analysis and preparation. You know, I'd like to bring that skill set to New London County schools, but also, you know, it's something that I've kept busy with, helping nonprofits. I'd like to bring that, you know, to my community as well. But you know, my daughter, she loves the schools. We like having her in the schools. We do have, for what we have to spend and the resources that we have excellent teachers. We have excellent schools, but we need a few things. We need some better service for multilingual, you know, which is why I want to bring back the immersion language learning program that we used to have. And of course that takes money, and there's streams of revenue and income that can go to the schools, but we need to have a cooperative government. And you know, you say, you know, you don't have to vote one row or even for 7, and that's always been the case, and it should be the case because, you know, partisan politics really don't have much value at the local level. They're local problems that affect everybody, and you know, you're really just looking for people who will work together and get the work done that you need them to get done. You need them to do for you, and we haven't had that.
Well, you know,
we haven't had that, and so
Yeah.
you know, it's like stop thinking so much about parties, but listen to the candidates that you want to, that what they're saying, what they want to do, and see if they can work together. And that's why I think this election is exciting, because I think most of the candidates are thinking that way now too.
I think so. And, you know, I've also spent time on nonprofit boards. And one thing that was really interesting to me for the one term I was on Board of Ed 15 years ago is that when you're on the board of an organization, that board is picked to have members who have complementary skill sets. So
That's what you want, yeah.
But elected boards are kind of random. It's like who gets most votes.
You get what you get.
And you know, so part of this voting intentionally is like who would be good members of a team together who could get along personally, but also bring different things to the table, because there are so many different areas of expertise that are important to the functioning.
And that's that's essential. It's really important to have that, you know, that rapport on a board, any deciding body. It's something that's always important to me as a voter. And through my past 2 campaigns, I've tried to project that as a value of mine. You know, one of the reasons I appreciate my party, the Green Party, why I have stuck with you for so long, is that you don't run a full ticket because you don't need to run a full ticket. There's other political perspectives in the city that are entitled to be represented, to be perfectly honest. I don't have a hard time working with someone who's conservative. When it comes to spending and budget stuff, I'm pretty conservative. And I don't mind working with people who are progressive. I think, in fact, in most of my past 2 campaigns, most of the Democrats on the board, you know, were very, very friendly and interested in my ideas and what I could do, you know, to help with that. I've built up relationships with board members and teachers and administrators over the years, and you know, it's not the actual operators that have a problem working with different parties.
Right.
It's some parties, you know, wanting kind of a zero-sum control the city, and that's another reason why I run on a third party. I want people to feel like they have an option.
Not just because you're a glutton for punishment,
Not
right?
just because I'm a glutton for punishment. But yeah, it's just, as an accountant, you can plug me in into a lot of functions of an organization, and I can produce value. But I'm specifically interested in education because that's your base community investment that's going to bring returns, and from economic to crime to health to poverty. It starts there. And what I haven't been seeing in the past 10 or 20 years here is a very strong investment in the city itself. I've seen a lot of new development in buildings and properties, but not as much investment in the city itself, in education, in infrastructure.
Yeah, I'll make a pitch for Art Rolnick, which I do so frequently. And he isn't a household name, but he was the vice president of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve for many, many years. And he became very critical of the typical economic development model, which is giving tax abatements to companies that you want to move to your town. And he followed them around and said, well, you're not really developing anything. You're just moving development from town to town, putting towns in competition with each other. And sometimes the businesses aren't really, if they don't succeed, you've really just thrown your money down the drain. So when he was asked, so what should we invest in? He said, human capital, our human capital, that's real investment. And he was mostly interested in early childhood education, but he was also very interested in high quality education in communities that are low status, that have low resources, and developing the human capital in cities like New London.
Oh, absolutely. And with our economic conditions the way they are, the way to build, an economy in a city like ours is to make the city a place where people want to live, work, open a business, and shop. And again, that means infrastructure, and it does mean education. I've been frustrated with the crossing guard debacle, specifically because it's so petty and pointless. And who wants to live in a city, shop in a city, open a business in a city, when we're fighting over tens of thousands of dollars to get our kids across the street to school? And this has been going on in New London for at least a decade. They moved budget items out of the city and put them on the district, but they didn't earmark the money to walk with it. So now, the superintendent and the school board has to decide on whether they want to spend money to get kids safely to school, or have breakfast, or equipment and salaries and all the other things that we need for the school. And the kids have to get there safely. They do. And why the city for a decade has tried to make that a tough call for the district, and money's tight, like we all understand that, but we're talking, like the amount of money that's being discussed here in terms of the city budget, even in terms of single departments, like police, like fire, are pittances.
Well, it's been pointed out that this primary election that was recently held would have funded crossing guards. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have primaries, because it is part of the democratic process, small d democratic process, that is important. And I'll be the first to admit that we ended up with a better slate of candidates after the primary than before. So I'm not really saying head to head, but if we can spend that money on this exercise, then I wouldn't say kids' safety is less important.
Right. Right. And it's in this particular circumstance, this has happened. It has gone on for so long that there just wasn't anybody pushing back at the city until the last minute, until September, when people noticed there were no crossing guards, and that's what I'm talking about. My first campaign, I was asked a question at debate, like, if you can't, when you're collectively making a decision, if you can't come to a consensus, like, what do you do about that? And it was a good question. It wasn't one I had actually thought about at the time, but I did. And my answer was, you keep discussing the problem. You don't let it sweep under the rug. I'm the kind of person that actually has the stamina to complain about something for 10 years straight. So here I am. But when I spoke to Efren, who had voted at the September meeting against moving funding from the city to the district to pay for the crossing guards, they had needed a supermajority, and they didn't get one. It was him and Riona that voted against it, even though the majority of councilors, and that's what really precipitated this primary the way it was. But Efren, he works at Benny Dover. I'm there every day, and so I asked him, I'm like, why'd you vote that way? You're voting against the interest of the district that you work in, and his answer to me was, well, I voted to send it back to committee because they had all summer to bring this to us, and if it was going to be a problem, why are we, and it should go to committee to decide. I'm like, Efren, you're an incumbent, you've sat in the chair for years now, this is every budget. This isn't a problem. This wasn't a new problem. There's no discovery to have. And that's where I think a lot of people get frustrated with trying to influence the local city government is they talk around subjects. And I'm, like I said, I'm happy to be that voice that's at a council meeting or at a Board of Ed meeting, confronting these hard things. For the most part, the Green Party's given me a pretty liberal hand, and my public asks. So I'm not too worried about them being mad at me for sticking up for something. Yeah.
Well,
but it does seem to be an issue with the government that we have in place, especially the.
Yeah, we're all about decentralization and grassroots democracy. I did want to remind people, we do have a phone set up. I've never really used it, so I think it will work. But the phone number is 860-445-7499. If you have a question for Keith, feel free to call in and ask it.
Yeah.
And if there aren't any calls, then I'll ask the questions. But you all have the power to do so as well.
And it's what I'm here for. I mean, it's also one of my big reasons for wanting to be on the board is to have a parent, on the board with a child in school who is open to the public, willing to interact with the public, willing to come out and talk to them, hear what they need from me, what their questions are. So,
and it is true, and it was true of me as well, that most of the board members, many of them have children, but they don't have. Most of them do not have children currently in the school system.
Right.
And
I think that provides me with an advantage. I know that when sometimes I would talk about things that were happening in the schools to board members, they weren't always aware. So they didn't have a kid in the school. And so, I mean, I definitely think that's an advantage. I also like most of our Board of Education. I actually don't have a lot of notes for the Board of Education, but I do think that the city could use my unique skill set and influence for the district. I hope people will agree. I look forward to the opportunity to work with many of them. And I'm pulling for some special counselors too, because I think that there could be more cooperation across the government in those two departments, and so yeah, I'm really looking forward to a more cooperative campaign. Candidates are talking about what they agree on and disagree on and what they want to do.
And it's more of a deep conversation than just all the Democrats being on the same line. I mean, literally on the ballot they are, but having all of them think of themselves as individual viewpoints added in, as well as the Republican lines and a green line.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of weird or shocking to me that we have like a uni-party city government. It's not the city. It's not the people who live in the city. And again, like, I just think it's ridiculous for partisan politics to be in local politics, because whether or not whether your priorities are slightly different, most of the things you're going to have a consensus on. People who live in a local area, they're affected by the same issues and problems. And so it doesn't really matter who's sitting in the White House or in Congress or in the State House. But it does matter what those ideas are, what you think about those people, and what they can do.
And I wanted to point out that, interestingly, the New London Green Party is doing something this year that it very rarely does. And maybe we can show what the ballot looks like. Well, this is what the ballot looks like from the lottery, which is not the official, like, formal-looking ballot, but
it's who won.
Yeah, on the council side and on the Board of Ed side, this is the City Council side, and you will see that we have Grandma Dot Ames and Lucien Varela running, and they are Green Party members. But we've also endorsed Jeff Hart, who's on two other lines, the Democratic line and Working Families line. Interestingly, I think this is technically true. Jeff forced the primary, so he got on the ballot that way. He was technically never really endorsed by the DTC.
No, he wasn't endorsed.
And we like independent thinkers, and it seemed like a good idea to start showing like that there can be some flow in how people, and encouraging people from different parties to talk to each other. You might have seen the day paper last Sunday that Aaron Ide on the Republican line, 1B, and Lucien Varela on 2D submitted in a guest opinion to the day, pretty much on the subject of, we don't agree on several issues, but we can work together, and each of us would play a role being on a board together.
Right.
It said a lot more than that, but
yeah. Well, but that's really what it is that we can work together, and the city deserves to be represented by diverse voices, like actually diverse voices. And Lucien and Aaron brought up a really good point, and you could see, just from the ballot, the fact that three parties are endorsing one person, kind of shows you right off the bat that, it's entirely possible to vote for different people from different parties and still have the same values and same work get done. And Jeff happens to be a good city councilor. He was Board of Ed before that, and he, throughout the past 2 years, has defied the mayor. He's criticized some of his decisions. He's pressured some of them to be changed. He did not vote for the budget that excluded snow clearing and crossing guards because it's been a problem and because he was on the board. And, he understood that that was a problem, and it wasn't, it didn't matter to him that that was how the mayor wanted to do things and how select members of the DTC wanted to do things. And for that, he was rewarded by not being endorsed, an incumbent in their own party. But I was really grateful that by taking that step, he risked some political energy and power to really kind of bring that issue to the head. And it did. And
it wasn't just being contrary. It was because he was talking to people.
Right. It wasn't being contrary at all. It's just that he understood the problem, and it wasn't a new problem. And, and that's been my issue with the single party government, is that over the past couple of decades, it has become very just controlling. I appreciate the new community center. Pastros was, instrumental in getting going. I would have located it a different place, but that's beside the point. The city needed it, and we got it. I appreciated him putting in new sidewalks. They're still putting in sidewalks on Coleman right now.
They're beautiful too.
And I even appreciate some of the development that he's done, but I don't appreciate, the adversarial relationship with the school district, because they don't want to pay for things that the city historically pays for and should pay for. They don't send a bill to the police department to clear their snow. So the problem isn't that, these aren't effective representatives. The problem is when you criticize them or go against you, not only he doesn't just disagree with you, he punishes and silences and tries to shut things down. He did it to me for months, trying to get police to monitor traffic on a single corner, and he gets angry when you disagree with him, and it has bad outcomes for the city.
And I would recommend that people do sometimes look at the YouTube channel, the City Council one. You can see the past meetings. I don't think viewers would have to really look at like all those long videos, but to watch the public comment and to see how councilors respond to the public comment is something the public really should watch, because it's very inconsistent. Some councilors treat the public much more appropriately and respectfully than others, and these are public meetings. That should be well known. I wanted to put up the Board of Ed ballot also, because what we did with the City Council, we did something similar with Board of Education, and Elaine Maynard Adams was also very vocal about defending the Board of Education budget. She was also not endorsed. You see her.
But we will.
It doesn't really. I'm not as happy with this ballot design as the other one, although it amuses me that Rich Martin and John Martin are on the same column. But it doesn't really look like you and Elaine are on the same team. But I think the point is partly there aren't really different teams that are against each other. There are groups of people who can work together. And not only Elaine, but Scott Garbini has always been a very positive force towards working with people from other parties
and again,
on the Board of Ed.
He's cross-endorsed by Working Families, and he's another one that he's somebody I know personally. I worked with him and discussed ideas with him when he was on the Board of Ed in New London previously, and we're in communication now we're trying to coordinate ideas. Most of I get along with Rich and Scott and Elaine. Most of these others are newer ones, and I had more relationships with older board members. But yeah, no, I mean these people. Karen Bergen is also another good one. These these are the guys that want to get things done. They want to get the work done. They want to take care of New London, represent New London, and they're really not as interested in your party affiliation as they are in your ideas, and how you can help.
And I mentioned there was not viewers might note, there was not a Board of Ed primary.
Right.
So how is it that Elaine was also never endorsed by the Democratic Party?
Yeah.
And what happened was there was another candidate on the ballot, Bianca Alexis, who withdrew from the election, resigned from the board.
Right.
And the timing was such that the DTC, this is my understanding, or had been thinking about replacing Bianca with someone else on the ballot prior to the primary. Well, didn't the Secretary of State actually ordered the Democrats to not hold that primary after Bianca withdrew? The Secretary of State's office said, wait, now you have 7 candidates. You don't need a primary. And the city actually had to send out for different ballots.
Nice.
So neither of them has been endorsed by the DTC, even though they're on line A. And both Jeff and Elaine have been very open to working with people from all parties who want to move things forward. So I think we can move to issues. You mentioned about the immersion language program, and I know that when Pixel was much smaller than she is now, you and Janine enrolled her in Jennings School.
I put her in Jennings for that program, and it was canceled. So she's half Cuban, Pixel's Latinx. But I was excited that our district had immersion language learning, which is even more valuable in our community, which is multilingual. But immersion language has the power to create bilingual citizens, students, at a very high level, not conversational, but actual academic Spanish and English, and which is what we had. We had a Spanish class. If I had my way, we would have more than one immersion language learning.
Yeah, there were a lot of languages in town. One year when I was working for Head Start, I only had 11 students, and we had something like 5 or 6 home languages.
Yeah.
English, Spanish, Creole, Urdu, Gujarati, Tagalog, Ogone, and these were New London kids.
Yeah.
So the school system really has a lot of language diversity.
And there's some Italian in there. It would be one of the dialects of Italy. That's another story. But yeah, and these programs are expensive, and we spend a lot of money on ESL teachers and foreign language teachers to begin with. But getting a teacher to teach an immersion language program means they have to have very high level in both languages because they're going to be speaking with native speakers of both languages. But it has huge payoffs. And this was a platform item for me since my very first campaign. Because I was very disappointed that my daughter couldn't participate in it. I was disappointed for the city. I felt bad for the students. And my first debate, somebody had asked what happened to that program, And Elaine Maynard said there wasn't any, we just couldn't find the money to keep it going. And
that's sad.
and then it filled into my second campaign, because then I started looking for ways to pay for it, right? And it turns out, that with all the new development that we've been doing, we should have been able to leverage that into funding for, almost anything that we needed, because these large construction companies, that's standard procedure for them. And Shanice, who was my running mate at the time, and I and some others, we did some research. We discovered that it is perfectly feasible to ask one of these development companies to fund an immersion language program. But so many of those decisions are being handled by too few people behind closed doors. It gets presented to the city council as a package to rubber stamp. And we've been building a lot of buildings, but it's been on the New Londoners' dime, and we're not getting much from it. So that's one of the things that I would push for is, hey, if you're giving away New London land, the city needs to get something in return for it. And I've got a list of things that the schools need. But I hope that gives the public some kind of insight into how I work. It's like, okay, we talked to the board in public during a debate. Where's the immersion language problem? What was holding it up? It was money, which is predictable.
Right.
So I went and looked for,
how do you get money?
How do I get money for this? How can we support this program? Because it should be doable. And, and that's the kind of work that I hope to bring, to the district, that process, that type of problem solving. And again, I want to be accessible, because I have kids in the school, and I know a lot of families in the district, and I want to hear what the board could do for them. My constant frustration every time I'm getting together with other families and we're discussing the district is poor organization, especially with communicating things to the families from administration and central office. And I agree. It's pretty consistent complaint throughout the district, and so I would like to start working on that. I'd like to get the district focused on that. What are some simple things that we can do to improve the situation? We had a problem with public safety and getting kids across the street to Jennings a couple of years ago. It really didn't cost anybody. I just had to get the chief of police to somehow send a cruiser down there to tell people they couldn't drive like that. And that's when I really discovered how combative the city is with the district. They asked like I was asking them to, commit to, a trip to the moon. But I did get it done through tenacity, which is my strongest suit. And that's what I want to see more of. And I'm really excited about the candidates that are on the ballots this year for council and city. Because I really think that I can work with a lot of them, but they're not necessarily in my party. We don't have a lot of people on the ticket.
Right, and it's intentional.
It's intentional.
Although it would be a challenge to find a full ticket.
It might
so,
be.
However, it is intentional. When I was on the Board of Ed, interestingly, there was a Democratic majority, but not a Democratic supermajority.
Right.
And one of the four Democrats was a very independent thinker, Bill Morse. He really was not a straight line person. So sometimes you went into votes and you really didn't know how it was going to come out. We don't have that with the single party. It's when the FOI Act was passed, Ella Grasso, that was her campaign promise in the 70s, that she'd pass Freedom of Information. And she did it, but the way it was done, I think it passed unanimously, but the way it was done is that party caucuses are exempt. Now, in a
Yeah.
way, that's okay, because like when we're in a Green Party meeting discussing strategy
Yeah.
or positions, I think we deserve some privacy. But when that translates to having a supermajority on every body in town, suddenly important decisions that should be made in the public are being made behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's an issue. It is. It's an issue in New London too.
yep, it is. But we're all working on it, and people within the Democratic Party are actually working on it too, because
Exactly.
many of them don't want to see a uniformity of opinions all across their line.
Right. Yeah, and I do think that that's something that people are interested in, and especially now, which is good.
So before we totally zig to something else, I wanted to mention, you said something about long-term thinking, and we don't have to share it, a picture of it, but when you mentioned Shanice's scorecard,
Right.
you
That's
know,
one of the items on it, and it's
Yeah.
it's, it's designed to cover long-term issues that we don't always think about when we.
yeah, when we make decisions, how does it rate for equity and accountability? What about environmental
What's its
impact?
impact,
What about economic impact?
Right.
What about budgetary impact? What about health and safety impact?
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that the Green Party is trying to do is to just bring a mentality of longer term thinking to every area, to the
Yeah.
board as well as to city council.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, before we run out of time, I think we have about 10 minutes left, but
little bit, yeah.
I wanted to mention that this year, our three, real true green candidates are all really part of the arts community in New London. Although I'll make a quick side note that Jeff Hart did a lot of music in the past,
Yeah, definitely
and
true.
we have a video of him, I think in about 2013, performing in Riverside Park
Oh,
at
nice.
one of the events.
Nice. Yeah.
I think it was in the rain.
Yeah.
So I
he
kid him.
definitely has a music background, and Lucian does too.
Yeah,
And Dot.
as a promoter rather than
Yeah.
an enthusiast,
Yes.
rather than an actual musician.
Right.
And you are part of the arts community in a totally different way. So
Yeah, I mean,
let's talk about it.
I'm a content creator. I do photography now. I actually went to Mass Art in Boston and learned. My degree was 2D fine art, which, drawing, painting, printing, photography, and it played a big influence on me coming here after school and my early 20s and staying here was because New London is a very arts-based community, and I don't think I was really ready to really focus on my art at the time, so I went back to business school and became an accountant. But
The artist accountant.
the artist accountant, I was going alphabetically through careers, I guess, but I retired, so now I can wear overalls, and I was looking for, something else to do, and I started building my photography. It's very focused on New London specifically, and New London architecture and the buildings that we have in this city, which are spectacular, and there's really nothing like them anywhere else. But I found that I had these two communities that were, disconnected, and one was the political community and one was the arts community. And the last election, I ran with Eddie Leon, and he's also an artist. And we talked a lot about that. And I got the idea to start publishing photos again and locally about my local subjects. And it's brought those two communities together. They could see that, I'm multifaceted. I'm interested in the arts, and just shows them a non-political side of me, of my connection and my deep roots in New London. In fact, I will be having a piece on display at the community center next month. And I will probably contribute pieces regularly to them because they want to keep art on the wall from local artists, and we have enough.
We do have a lot of local artists that it's great to give exposure to.
But what I really like is that I create the type of stuff that is really appropriate for spaces like that. Is mostly pictures of skylines and buildings and areas in New London, that play very well in that sort of space. So, it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable for me to connect the two parts of my life. I've really enjoyed kind of getting away from day-to-day accounting to make my money and going over to photography instead. So, it's really made me seriously consider just doing something that's New London focused, like a photography company that was New London focused, but we'll see.
That would be really pretty interesting. And interestingly, one of the things that Dot is interested in, who is, she lives in an old house that she's in the process of preserving.
Right.
And like the historic architecture is it is one asset of New London, one resource we have that has not really often enough been appreciated.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate seeing the urban landscapes.
It's important for me too. For that reason, because these buildings were built by what was a 1% of the 19th century, and you'll never see anything like them again. And I really want people to just look up and look around and look at the city and just appreciate what a beautiful place it is to live. So that we start taking those things seriously, start maybe making some decisions about how we're going to preserve them.
Well, we have 5 minutes left, I'm told. And I guess maybe you could just sort of summarize a few things you see as New London's special resources, and a couple things that might be the challenges that seem, kind of daunting.
The challenges are always going to be money, or how we spend it. I think, as far as advantages, we do have a very powerful art community and athletic community here. So there's a pool of a lot of talented people, especially in the arts, especially in athletics, and we have, being on the ocean is a big advantage. The cooperation of UConn and Project O with our district is something I appreciated when I went to school here. My daughter appreciates it, and we have tremendous history. So really, our challenges are to just really make this community as pleasant a place to live as possible. And for me, that starts with the schools.
Oh, yeah. Well, so this is sort of a reminder of people's timelines on elections.
Yeah, it's tight.
Early voting starts in 4 weeks. On October 20th, I think. Election day is in 6 weeks. That isn't that far away.
Right.
If you're not registered to vote, you can do it online. I don't have the URL for it, but an internet search for like SOTS voter registration takes a person to a website where you can register. We'll be having some events upcoming too, and we'll have registration forms. But really, the best way to do it these days is online, because cards can get lost. But transmitting the data straight to the Secretary of State's website is kind of can't fail. So 2 years ago, voter turnout was really low.
Bad.
It was really disturbing. We had been tracking it, and voter turnout did vary quite a bit, but generally, in a municipal election, was about maybe 4,000 voters, and it was down like 20% 2 years ago. I don't know why exactly that happened, but
I think people were sick of a single party and they weren't very encouraged to go out.
That could be it. I don't know if are having so many renters affects it. I'm not sure.
Well, COVID was probably a factor as well,
but people. I'm not even sure it's that important to vote on the national level. But it is really important to vote on a local level. These are people in office. They're our neighbors. We meet them in the supermarket. They have to listen to us.
And these are the decisions
they can't really ignore us.
Affect us daily.
So to go along with that, the next few shows between now and Election Day, I will be trying to talk to different candidates. And we appreciate your watching, and keep in touch. We'll try to get events out there so that everyone can meet everyone who's running. We'll see you next week. I believe we're going to have some city council candidates on next week. I am not sure, but tune in and we'll see you then. And thank you, Keith, and
thanks for having me.
Keep those photos coming, and everything else.
When the rain don't